Denver Broncos Mile High View, no commercials, no bullshit. I had prepackaged a video for before I left a week ago. Couldn't get it uploaded, but I'm glad that I didn't and was able to actually do a little bit more assessing before releasing something about the draft. That's the draft. I'm sorry. Let's try this. Free agency. First of all, people need to understand free agency. And free agency isn't free if you talk with the Players Association. They would like to have the franchise aspect of it go. Where you have true free agency, that means there's no franchise tagging players when their contract is up. So what you end up with is, a few A players, but mostly, B players. And we'll get into that in just a little bit. So the Broncos, I think one thing that you need to understand with the Broncos, too, I took a lot of crap from people when I said by bringing in Flacco that was going to decrease their cap space. And I can't tell you how much I was given a hard time by the so-called geniuses over at Mile High Report and those that, basically clamor to sports talk radio, that I didn't know what I was talking about. And as it turned out, Broncos were tied for 10th in the league for, not having the cap space. So, again, it reflects on how this went. Their draft, or they keep saying the draft because the draft's coming up next month, real soon. And that's going to be a whole nother kit and caboodle. But where they were, because they spent I think it was $18 million to bring in Flacco that they could have put somewhere else, they were kind of restricted, and they were limited to the 10th overall team that couldn't spend money. So, in my opinion, with that said, I guess their draft was their draft, I said, can't get around draft. The free agency pickups that they had weren't necessarily bad, considering what the cash they had to work with, but I would still just put it as okay. They obviously were concerned with cornerback, and cornerback was thin. Make no mistake about that. Quality cornerback was thin, considering they got rid of cornerbacks and then they brought some in. So we'll go to cornerbacks. Callahan. The Broncos pick up Callahan. He is a question mark. He could be really good. And his claim to fame is covering slot catching receivers. And again, it's up and down. He's really good when he's on, but he's coming off a foot injury too. So he's a question mark. They brought in a question mark with him. That's for sure. Now Jackson, the guy from the Texans, just so we get I'm going to give you what they don't give you at Sports Talk or the Mile High View, none of that stuff. I'm going to tell you what you don't get with him and then what you do get. This is a decent pickup, but what you don't get with him, he is not a shutdown corner. So anybody that's putting that out there, that's not, they're absolutely wrong about that. That's not his bread and butter. You have to think of Jackson to be more like a Steve Atwater. He's more of a hard-hitting, if you get in the middle of the field, I'm going to, take your head off kind of guy. But, when it goes to go vertical, he gets beat. But since the majority of the playbook isn't go vertical, for all you people that love going vertical, don't you hate that Al Davis shit? Since that's that's not really a part of the playbook for most teams, that definitely works in Jackson and the Broncos' favor. However, If I was going to play the Broncos, and I had the ability to do it, I would go vertical on them for two reasons. One, I don't think they can cover, or I would test them to see if they can cover. I don't think they can, so that's why I would test them to see. But the other thing is where I think the Broncos failed in there, but again, it goes back because they got Flacco, was they didn't shore up the middle of their defensive line. Now, here's again, sports talk radio in Denver will tell you to ignore that. I've heard it so many times. The problem is I want one sports talk radio, you out there, whoever you are, to produce one highlight reel where the Broncos' interior defensive line shoves an offensive lineman in the face of a quarterback. It was non-existent last year. And what quarterbacks were able to do successfully, while the ends were getting, the bookends were coming at them, they could step up in the pocket fairly consistently. And that's BS. So where the Broncos failed, in my opinion, in their draft was addressing that. So I would attack the Broncos downfield because I feel I can step up in the pocket. They still haven't addressed the middle of their field. By the way, Derek Wolfe has been getting injured almost every year since Malik Jackson had left. And I think he's picking up more work than he should be. And unfortunately, the Broncos allowed Malik Jackson to slip over to the Eagles. Now, I don't think Malik Jackson was as good without Derek Wolfe, but the two of them together has proven to work, and unfortunately, the Broncos didn't go that way. Anyway, that was talking about the cornerbacks. Now I'm going to talk about tackles. This is, again, in my opinion, the Broncos didn't do what they could have done. They could have done a better job. They got Juwan James, who's a serviceable. Well, let's put it this way: the offensive line is in serious shape, and actually, this is why Juwan got paid as much as he did. The Dolphins would never have paid Juwan James because he's not a top shelf tackle. I'm sorry, he's not. And there's no way that the Dolphins, they were already going to get rid of him the year before, but because offensive line, that for whatever the reason, it only works in New England. They're the only people. Plus, the fact that their quarterback releases the ball quick, that's typically their system. It's really offensive line friendly. Other than that, league-wide, offensive lines have been troublesome. So James was retained by the Miami Dolphins because there wasn't really anybody good enough to replace him, although he himself is a serviceable tackle. Now, that is still a huge upgrade to what we've had. I mean, it's been a turnstile. It's really been a turnstile there since the end of Peyton Manning's. It got worse and worse once you had Trevor Siemian in there and Case Keenum. It was just a turnstile. Just players just coming through at will. And I will say where I think I would have preferred to have saw was Trent Brown be brought in from the Patriots. But he may not also, because he was in a system, then that could be the argument too. But I think he was definitely an upgrade to Juwan James. Now, in the Broncos' defense, they do have a decent offensive line guru, and this could make this guy, he could elevate this guy or help him become that more consistent as a tackle. And that's what we're going to look at. We're going to see if he can be consistent as a right tackle. And that actually is going to also bode with the coaching staff too. That's what I want to say. This is also a coaching staff critique and how they work with these players. So we went through, and also we have to remember Joe Flacco himself was a part of this free agency, and he gave us a salary cap hit, and I'm not sure that this is the right direction that I would take. Especially you think about Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco doesn't want to see a younger quarterback be brought in. Even if it's like 3 or 4 years down the road, of course, he knows that the organization, the fans, aren't going to put up with it the second he throws his first interception. He understands how it works. So, the Broncos, by bringing in Joe Flacco, make it much more difficult to groom a quarterback of the future. That's why I thought Case Keenum would have been a better choice. I don't know if you're going to win now with Joe Flacco any more so than you would with Case Keenum. And again, Case Keenum went to a crap team. The bottom line, he went to a crappy team. And all you people that are quarterback obsessed, if you ever notice your star quarterbacks normally have star coaching staffs, head coaches that accompany them, always. So, the case can be made going all the way back all the way back to the early Super Bowl years. Okay? So, do we have that now? And that's another thing, too. I want to bring up this with the quarterback is that we don't know how the offensive coordinator and Flacco, how this is going to work. I called in one of my videos our new offensive coordinator, Lolita Transvestite, because he looks good. Looks good on paper. He looks, from distance it looks good, but once we get up close, we'll see if it's really that good. Okay? So, my next thing I want to talk about is the New York Jets and the Denver Broncos. I really am disappointed, too, in the Broncos. They have not really addressed their linebacking in this free agency. They let C.J. Mosley go to the Jets, but the Jets are doing amazing things because guess what? They have a budget. And I brought that up again, and now it's coming back to bite the Broncos, but I don't know what I'm talking about. They are doing some amazing things over at the Jets. Very interesting stuff. And C.J. Mosley was a part of that. That, I thought, would be a great pickup for the Broncos. Didn't happen. Maybe, for budgetary reasons again, and that budget again. So, that's pretty much my take with the Broncos in free agency. I just would like to get to the coaches. And defensively, it's pretty solid across the board, but I'm still really interested. Our defensive coordinator is worked closely with Fangio. They're on the same page, which really is going to help that happened. But again, I think they need help, and this will probably transition us into the free agent or not free agent. Now I can talk about the draft. Getting them all confused. Draft. So, linebacker. This is a strong defensive draft. I either want to see linebacker in the first round, or I want to see somebody in the middle that can make a difference. Again, push that. Make these new cornerbacks' jobs easier. The secondary's job easier by, let's get a little push into the face of the quarterback. If you see next year, if you see teams, quarterbacks, I don't care who they are, it doesn't matter. As long as they are protected and again, step up in the pocket, they're going to do pretty good. Okay? But if we can upgrade, give Wolf some help and start pushing that. Not only do you have to push the quarterback or the lineman in the quarterback's face, you're going to have to run stop. And they had some issues with that too. So defensive line in the middle, to me, is proven that it needs help. That would also include linebacker, and I don't think that not too many people would argue about that. Linebacker, they really need help, and again, we really, in my opinion, we really dropped the chalupa with linebackers. in this free agency as well. But again, the Broncos, they're limited because they brought in Joe Flacco. That could have been a difference, too, is had they kept Case Keenum, a couple of things. One, you could have probably got a little bit more help. Two, you could have got your corners, and you probably could have got your mainstay linebacker, or your mainstay your mainstay interior lineman. But because you went and went that route, and plus you could look at next year's draft and the almighty next year's draft for quarterbacks, and bring them in. So, you're going to, whether or not all the cheerleaders for Flacco want to admit it or not, you are going to pay a price down the road for Flacco, that you may not have won, especially if he doesn't quite elevate the team as advertised. That could be a big problem. And here's the other thing, too. I'm in total agreement with veteran leadership, 100%. Unless you get somebody like, the draft is the quarterback position is so strong. You got a Peyton Manning, you get a John Elway Marino, this kind of thing. But that is so far few and in between. It's better to, again, I keep saying this, build the team that a quarterback can play in. And a coaching staff. Have an all-star coaching staff. Then you don't have to worry about it. Aaron Rodgers will. If you like him. I have a problem with some of the things he does. And I think one reason we got our offensive line coach is Ben Roethlisberger has created a real bad situation. So quarterbacks can be cancerous too, as well as the big arm and all the hype and stuff. They can be not so good too. So, but if you get look at Brady was in the the 6th round. So it's not this whole you got to get a quarterback. If you listen to idiot D-Mac, the guy's a complete moron. Rosen, all these quarterbacks, they're all Hall of Famers to him. And they could be if they get on the right team, right coaching. But looks like the Jets are trying to give Darnold every chance that he can get to succeed. But he ain't going to succeed if they have a crap offensive line. They get all these good players, but their offensive line is crap. It ain't going to help him out. If I'm not mistaken, he is a pocket quarterback or a prototypical pocket quarterback. So the Jets, well, of all things, maybe more than bringing in some of the players they're bringing in, they should take a look over at Patriot country, say we need this guy that we got as a quarterback, Darnold, to get rid of the ball quicker, shorter to mid-range passes, and quick throws, and put a good offensive line in front of him. That's what I would do if I had him. But we'll see. You get coaches in there they got all these plays that take forever to develop. They don't have the offensive line to support it, and the quarterback's a bum, see? Again, coaching, great coaching staffs, a compliment. Great coaching staffs complement great quarterbacks. It doesn't ever go any other way.